The laughter echoed like a slap. You know the kind. High, bright, effortless, fake. I was still standing at the front gate when I heard my father's voice drift over from the courtyard, deeper than I remembered, tinged with wine and celebration. It cut right through me. My name is Camille. I'm 38 years old and I live in Napa Valley, California. This estate, this perfectly manicured vineyard with its winding gravel path and lavender hedges, was mine, every inch of it. And not one person beyond that iron gate knew it. Well, except one. My sister, Priscilla. "Oh, no, you can't just waltz in here like some glorified farmhand," she said, stepping in front of me in heels too high for a vineyard. Her voice had that condescending lilt it always did, the one she used when she was about to say something cruel in front of other people so she could call it a joke later. "This is a private event, family only." "I was invited," I said calmly. "By whom? Dad?" She gave a short laugh. "Come on, Camille. You think he wants his retirement celebration to be about your failed little vineyard hobby?" I almost laughed. Failed. That's what she still thought. I looked over her shoulder at the lounge I designed, the tasting room where some of the world's top sommeliers flew in last month for our private barrel sampling, now decorated with gold streamers and a cheap vinyl banner that read, "Cheers to Retirement" in bold Comic Sans. She waved a hand in front of my face. "Are you still here? Or did you get lost in one of your rustic daydreams?" I felt the deed in my purse then, the thick envelope pressing against my side. A gift. A historic French estate that I had flown out to personally close on last month. I'd had it written over to my father's name in honor of today. He didn't know. No one did. "Nice outfit," Priscilla added, eyeing me up and down. "Vintage or just outdated?" It was a tailored deep green suit. Custom, Italian. Probably worth more than the leased BMW she bragged about on Facebook. I stayed silent. Behind her, I could see guests sipping glasses of Reserve Blanc I created. Beneath string lights I had personally commissioned from a Provence artisan. I'd built this place, this entire brand. Brick by dusty brick, vine by vine. "Camille, don't make this weird, okay?" she said, softening her tone in that fake way that always made me want to scream. "Just don't embarrass yourself, or Dad, or us." My mouth stayed shut, but my fingers tightened around the iron gate. It wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. Symbolic, really. "What exactly are you doing here anyway?" she asked, stepping closer. "Hoping to drop off a case of wine? Be the help for the day? You've already done your part. The decor looks charming, like a farmer's market threw up. But Dad wanted elegance. You wouldn't get that." I could feel my pulse in my jaw, in my ears. I glanced past her again, to the man I hadn't seen in over 2 years, my father. His laugh bellowed as he clinked glasses with some retired executive I didn't recognize. My mother stood beside him in pale pink cashmere, sipping the wine she once told me was too acidic for polite company. I took a breath, then another. They didn't know I owned this land, that I was the silent founder of the very vineyard name etched on every bottle in their hands. I'd made sure of that. I had my reasons. But this was too much. "You really should leave," Priscilla said again, this time more forcefully. "This is a celebration for achievers, Camille. And you, well, no offense, but you chose agriculture." Something burned in my chest. Not shame, not anymore. It was something else. Heavier, older. I was done hiding. I reached into my purse and felt the edge of the envelope, then let my hand rest there. "I think I'll stay," I said quietly. Her lips curled. "Seriously?" I didn't answer. I just opened the gate. Priscilla let out a sharp laugh, the kind that didn't need an audience but played like it had one anyway. "Oh my God, you really are going to try this, huh?" she said, following a step behind me. "Camille, this is sad. Honestly, sad I didn't respond. I didn't need to." The gravel crunched beneath my heels as I walked up the path toward the courtyard, each step a little more grounded than the last. Behind me, her voice kept going, louder now. "You do realize how ridiculous you look, right? That suit? It's not even trending. I don't know what Etsy shop you dug that up from, but it screams desperate." I turned slightly. "It's handmade. In Milan." "Oh, is that what they're calling thrift stores now?" she snapped. Then, catching up, she dropped her voice to a dramatic whisper. "Camille, They're wearing La Mer in there. Valentino. You think you're going to blend in with your little countryside cosplay. I paused at the edge of the courtyard, just past the wisteria arch I planted myself 7 years ago. I could see the tasting lounge from here, now filled with people in sharp suits and pastel dresses, sipping from glasses they didn't deserve. Priscilla's stilettos clicked to a stop beside me. Don't embarrass yourself. Just walk away. You can go back to your little shack with the barrels and dirt and whatever it is you do. I turned to face her, calm. Is this how you greet all your landlords? She blinked. What? I just smiled. That threw her. She opened her mouth, closed it, then recovered like it hadn't happened. Oh, come on, don't tell me you're still bitter about the firm. We were being generous, letting you speak with leasing. You can't possibly expect them to approve your little homemade label in a high-rise like that. I tilted my head. You're applying for space in the Guilford building. She froze. I gave her a nod. My company owns the top 3 floors, including the leasing rights. The look in her eyes, flickering, faltering, was almost satisfying. Almost. You're lying, she said quickly, but her voice cracked just a hair. I shrugged. Better hope your partner didn't miss that email from my head of property. Priscilla tried to recover again, brushing her hair over her shoulder. Well, we're not desperate. We have other options. Besides, it's not like you're in any real industry. You sell wine. Correct, I said. To 11 of the top 15 Michelin restaurants on the West Coast, including the one that catered your firm's last holiday party. Her cheeks flushed, and I saw the twitch in her eye that always showed up when she didn't have a comeback ready. Just then, our mother emerged from the lounge, a flute of champagne in hand. Her pale pink scarf draped just so over her shoulder. She didn't see me right away. She was too busy air-kissing someone goodbye at the gate. Mother, Priscilla said sweetly, straightening, look who decided to show up. Unannounced, our mother turned. Her eyes landed on me and narrowed instantly. Oh, she said, her smile flatlining. You came, I nodded. Good to see you too. She looked me over once, twice, and gave a soft, humorless laugh. That's what you wore? It's couture, I said simply. She gave me a look. It's rustic. Priscilla snorted. Anyway, our mother said, her tone shifting to that clipped politeness she reserved for public interactions she didn't want to have. I hope you're not here to make a scene. Your Father's Day is meant to be joyful. I wouldn't dream of disrupting your curated elegance, I said. She sipped her drink, watching me over the rim. Priscilla tells me you've been doing something with grapes? Priscilla chimed in. She has a little vineyard. Ah, our mother's eyebrows lifted like she had just been told I was breeding goats. How charming. I felt the heat rising behind my ribs, but I didn't let it show. Not yet. You know, she continued, you really should have gone into something more stable. Law, finance, even marketing. But I suppose someone has to live out the family fantasy of running a farm. Priscilla laughed again, too loud, too fake. I mean, Camille's always liked mud. I stayed still. I let them talk. It was better that way. Anyway, Priscilla said, looping her arm through Mother's, we should really get back to the real guests. The tasting is about to start and, oh, you'll love this. We have a private reserve white from a French estate. Absolutely exquisite. Imported directly from the owner. Top secret label. I smiled then. Just barely, because I already knew the wine. I commissioned it. I signed off on the blend. I named the label. They had no idea. Priscilla waved me off like I was background noise. Maybe you can find a quiet corner somewhere. Just don't talk too much. People might think you're part of the catering staff. And just like that, they turned their backs. But I didn't move. I waited. Because the reveal was coming. And they wouldn't see it until it was too late. I stood there, motionless, as they drifted away. My mother's perfume still lingered in the air. Something floral and expensive that had always made me feel 10 years old again. Back then, I used to straighten my posture and hope she'd say something kind. Now, I just stood in my own shadow, grounded and still. The wind picked up slightly, and I heard the chime of wine glasses clinking from the lounge. A round of laughter rose again, my father's this time. Full and satisfied, like someone who believed he was surrounded by everyone that mattered. The private reserve white, my wine, my blend. I looked down at the path, at the small bits of gravel clinging to my heels. My hands were calm, too calm. I knew that feeling. It was the kind of calm that came right before something shifted. "I'm gonna need you to leave," Priscilla said behind me. I turned. She'd come back alone, arms folded tight across her chest. Her jaw clenched in a way that made the skin near her ears twitch. "I'm serious, Camille. This isn't the time or place." I didn't say anything. "You being here, it's not appropriate," she added. "This event is for family and achievers, not whatever it is you are now." That one hit me low in the stomach. Not hard, just a slow, twisting jab. The kind that builds pressure instead of pain. "Go home," she said, and for a second, I caught the flicker of something in her eyes. Not hatred. Not even disgust. Fear. Because deep down, she knew something wasn't right. She didn't know what it was, but she knew she had miscalculated. Badly. "You think this is funny?" she asked, stepping forward. "Showing up like this, standing here like some ghost from a story no one wants to remember?" I said nothing. She gave a dry laugh. "Seriously, what do you want? You want to pour some wine? Pass out samples? Sweep the patio? Don't you have some barrels to check?" My breath was steady. I could hear my pulse in my ears again, but it wasn't panic. It was clarity. A kind of humming stillness I hadn't felt in a long time. "I came here to give Dad something," I said softly. She rolled her eyes. "Right, a bottle of your homemade cider." I reached for my purse and touched the envelope again, but didn't pull it out. "Not yet. You think showing up here with your dusty little wine dreams makes you part of something?" she continued. "You think a few grapevines and Instagram photos makes you relevant?" Still, I didn't flinch. I just looked past her, toward the tasting lounge, toward the windows where the laughter floated out in waves. This was my land. This was my lounge. These were my vines. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Her face twisted. "You think you can just insert yourself back into this family like nothing happened? After all the embarrassment you caused? You dropped out of Columbia, Camille. You ran away to play farmer in dirt and sun. And we—" She motioned to the lounge. "We moved on. We built real lives." I felt the words land, one by one. Dropped out. Embarrassment. Dirt. I remembered standing in front of my father 10 years ago, telling him I wanted to buy an acre of dead vineyard in Sonoma with the money I'd saved from my job at the wine bar. I remembered the silence, the cold stare, the exact words. "If you walk away from this family, don't expect us to follow you into the mud." They hadn't. And now, here I was, standing on the land they didn't know they owed me. "You've made your point," Priscilla said. "Now leave before someone mistakes you for staff." I opened my mouth, not to argue, but to walk away. I actually considered it. And then, like a voice from the past, I remembered the woman who mentored me at 23, when I was bottling Pinot Noir in a garage with labels printed on recycled paper. I remembered what she said when I told her people laughed at me for chasing something I couldn't prove yet. "Own your story, or someone else will rewrite it for you." And suddenly, I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was real. I looked Priscilla dead in the eyes and said, clearly and calmly, "I think I'll stay." She blinked. "I'm serious," I added. "You should probably go let them know. I'm not leaving." For a moment, her mask cracked. Not all the way, just enough to show panic flashing beneath the surface. Then she scoffed, turned sharply on her heel, and marched back toward the courtyard, her heels digging tiny divots into the gravel. I stood alone at the edge of the estate, the air warm and dry. The vines rolled behind me in long, perfect rows. Everything I built. Everything I was about to take back. The courtyard quieted the second Mateo appeared. He stepped out from the tasting lounge, linen shirt crisp, dark slacks spotless. A gold pin with the vineyard's crest glinting in the late afternoon sun. Heads turned as he walked, purposeful, past the guests with a calm authority that came only from someone who knew exactly where he stood. "Madam Proprietor," he said, stopping just in front of me with a warm nod. "Your table is ready. The head vintner is inside waiting to go over the latest harvest notes with you." The air shifted. Behind me, I heard a sharp intake of breath, Priscilla returning just in time to witness it. "What did you just call her?" she snapped. Mateo turned toward her, politely confused. "Madam Proprietor, this estate belongs to Miss Camille Duval. Is there a problem?" There was a silence, deep and sudden, like the whole courtyard had been slapped awake. "My... what?" Priscilla blinked rapidly, her voice shrill now. She's not. The Duval estate is owned by Duval Wines International, Matteo said evenly, which is wholly owned by Ms. Duval. Has been for the last 6 years. We have the charter framed in the lounge if you'd like to see it. My mother, who had wandered back toward the commotion, dropped her champagne flute. It didn't shatter, it just thudded to the ground and rolled. I looked over just in time to see her stagger back a step, catching herself against a decorative wine barrel. Priscilla's clutch slipped from her fingers and landed in the gravel with a soft thud. And I just stood there, still, calm, no more hiding. Is this some kind of joke? My mother asked, her voice shaking. You don't own this place. You can't. I do, I said, my voice even. I bought the land years ago, rebuilt the winery from scratch, hired Matteo, hired every person here. You've been drinking my wine since the first glass you poured today. No, she whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it untrue. You've been gone. You dropped out. You failed. I nodded slowly. I did drop out. Then I apprenticed in Bordeaux, lived in a trailer for a year while learning soil science, slept in a barn in Paso Robles. Then I built this. Matteo stepped forward. Shall I inform the staff to begin seating? Madame Duval's tasting schedule is ready to resume. Priscilla still hadn't moved. Her face was frozen, like she'd been unplugged mid-sentence. I turned to Matteo. Not quite yet. One more thing. I pulled the envelope from my purse. Thick, cream-colored, tied with a silk ribbon. I brought this for my father, I said, lifting it slightly. It's the deed to an estate in Provence. I bought it last month. I had it transferred into his name. The entire courtyard went quiet. Gasps, confused murmurs. I heard someone whisper, "She owns the whole brand?" Another voice followed. "That's her. That's Camille Duval?" My mother blinked at the envelope like it was a bomb. He doesn't know yet, I added softly. He thinks he's celebrating his retirement in a vineyard some wealthy investors built. He doesn't realize he's standing on ground I own, land I restored, wine I created. I looked her in the eyes, because I never wanted it to be about me. She didn't respond. Her jaw opened, but no words came out. Priscilla found her voice again, but it came out brittle. So, what? This is your big moment? You parade in, drop a deed, and expect what? Applause? No, I said simply. Just the truth. I turned toward the lounge. As I walked, Matteo stepped beside me, just far enough to give me space, just close enough to block anyone who might try to stop me. The staff inside straightened as I entered, not startled, not surprised. Just respectful. They already knew. They always knew. And now, everyone else did too. My name was on every bottle. They just hadn't bothered to look. The heavy oak doors to the tasting lounge swung open before I even reached them. Miguel, our sommelier, gave me a small, respectful nod as he held them wide, revealing the room I had designed down to the brass fixtures and reclaimed wine barrel ceiling beams. It was strange, stepping inside with everyone finally watching. For years I had come and gone quietly through the side entrance or after hours, invisible by choice. Today, though, every gaze followed me. Wide-eyed, stunned, hushed. My mother stood frozen just outside the door, her pale heels sunk into the gravel like she might fall if she tried to move. Priscilla trailed several steps behind, her mouth tight, her cheeks splotched red, clutching her phone like she was about to Google how to delete memory in front of 30 guests. Inside, heads turned one by one. People who'd barely glanced at me earlier now whispered to each other, "That's her, Camille Duval. She owns all of this?" I didn't speak. I didn't need to. "Ms. Duval," said Miguel, gesturing toward the private corner booth reserved for the owner. "Your table is prepped and decanted. Shall I bring over the notes from the cellar?" "Yes, thank you." I gave him a nod, then turned slightly toward the room, addressing the space more than any one person. "And let's rotate in the 2016 Syrah for comparison. That harvest was cooler than the others. I want the new investors to understand the difference." A few guests blinked. One man in a navy suit, someone who had laughed earlier at Priscilla's joke about my failed little farm, was now watching me like I'd grown a crown. My heels clicked across the stone floor as I walked deeper into the lounge, past tables of polished guests in pastel linen and gold watches. People smiled at me now, not out of courtesy, but calculation. They were mentally adjusting their understanding of who I was. A few feet behind, my family followed, dazed and quiet. I took my seat at the corner booth, the one with the view of the vineyard, the one I'd designed to remind me, always, why I built this. A waiter appeared with the first course, citrus-marinated olives, heirloom tomato tartlets, and a small bottle of my private reserve labeled only CD01. The label hadn't even been released yet. I caught Priscilla's eyes darting to the bottle, then to my outfit, then back to the bottle again. She looked ready to chew glass. "This old thing?" I said lightly, lifting the lapel of my green suit jacket. "It's a pre-release from Letizia Bianchi's atelier. She does about a dozen custom pieces a year, not available to the public yet." My mother's mouth opened, then closed. "You know," I added, tilting my head just slightly, "I almost didn't wear it today. It's so understated." Priscilla stared at me like I had spoken a language she didn't know. I looked her up and down. The stiff lavender sheath dress, the rhinestone clutch, the bracelet she'd probably ordered from one of those invitation-only influencer boutiques. Knockoffs. The whole look was built to impress people who didn't understand subtlety. "Lovely dress, by the way," I said, letting the words hang just long enough. "Your firm must be doing very well." She lifted her chin. "Actually, yes. We're in negotiations for a new lease." "Oh?" I took a slow sip of wine. "Guilford Tower, wasn't it?" Her smile faltered. "How did you—" "I own the top 3 floors," I said casually. "And the leasing rights." Priscilla's mouth parted, but nothing came out. "I'm sure your application is promising," I added, smiling just enough to let her know that I wasn't finished. I turned then, letting my gaze sweep the room. The faces, the posture shifts, the people who had smirked at me at the gate now sitting stiffly, unsure if they should stand, apologize, bow. I didn't want any of that. I just wanted them to see. "To think," I said gently, mostly to myself. "You all were drinking my wine before you knew whose name was on it." Priscilla's voice cracked as she tried to salvage what little control she thought she had. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I looked straight at her. "Because it was never about proving anything. It was about building something worth being proud of. And now they would all have to sit with that. Not the success. The fact that they dismissed it, dismissed me, while standing on ground I poured my soul into." I picked up the wine glass and held it to the light, letting the color reflect across the room. Clean, clear, and deep, just like the silence that followed. I didn't rush. I let the silence settle as I stood from my table and picked up my wine glass. I could feel the weight of every eye in the tasting lounge, all the careful whispers, the sideways glances, the faces of people calculating how many compliments they'd have to offer to cover the things they'd just said behind my back. The crowd had swelled by then, guests spilling in from the courtyard, drawn by the rumors now spreading like wildfire. My name passed from one mouth to the next like a myth being confirmed in real time. "Camille? She owns the place? Wait, is she the one who started Duval Wines? She's the CEO?" I walked toward the long wooden table in the center of the lounge, the head table, where my father sat. A glass in hand, laughing mid-sentence with a couple of old colleagues. He didn't see me right away. Not until I stood beside him. "Excuse me," I said gently, lifting my glass. "May I say a few words?" The laughter at the table trailed off. My father turned toward me, eyes narrowing with slow confusion. He looked tired suddenly. Older, like this party had run longer than he realized. "Camille?" he asked, standing slowly. "What are you—" "I'm the one who planned this," I said, loud enough for the whole room. "This celebration, this venue, the wine you've all been enjoying." A few murmurs rippled across the room. My mother looked like someone had just snapped her necklace. "I also designed the lounge you're standing in," I added. "Supervised its construction, chose the vineyard expansion, rebuilt the brand. I built this entire estate." My father stared at me. "Wait, what?" "I'm Camille Duval," I said clearly, raising my glass higher. "Founder and CEO of Duval Wines International." Gasps, audible ones. I saw one of the investors I'd met in Paris last year do a visible double take. A restaurant owner from San Francisco choked a little on her wine. Across the room, a hedge fund manager I'd turned down for a distribution deal last spring looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. My father blinked like he didn't trust his ears. You own this?" I nodded. "Yes, Dad. It's mine. All of it. The room fell into a stunned hush. I turned slightly, addressing the whole crowd now. I know many of you didn't realize where you were today. That's my fault. I built this company quietly. I chose to keep my name out of the press. I didn't do interviews. I didn't market myself, just the wine. Someone cleared their throat near the back. Someone else muttered, "Jesus Christ." I continued. This land was abandoned when I bought it. The vines were dead. The lounge was rubble. I was 29, broke, and full of ideas no one respected. I'd left college, walked away from everything, and came here to start over. My voice didn't shake. It was stronger than I expected. I worked the fields. I bottled by hand. I slept in the tasting room before it had walls. Every harvest, I reinvested. Every critic who turned me down, I invited again the next year. Until they listened. Until they tasted. People were standing now, watching, still, waiting. I turned back to my father. "I built this place for me," I said softly. "But today, I brought something for you." From my jacket pocket, I pulled out the envelope. The deed. I laid it gently on the table in front of him. "This is yours," I said. "An estate in Provence, a vineyard older than this one, with a private villa and a cellar that dates back to 1890. You always wanted to live in France again, remember?" He stared down at the envelope like it might catch fire. "Camille," he said, voice tight. "I don't understand." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm telling you now." He opened the envelope with trembling hands, read the first line, then the second. His mouth parted. It was the most honest expression I'd seen from him since I was 19 years old. The room waited. My mother looked like she might faint. Priscilla had backed into the wall, one hand clutching the nearest table like it was the only thing holding her upright. I turned back to the crowd, lifting my glass once more. "To my father," I said, my voice rising, "for his retirement, for his legacy, and for reminding me that silence doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it just means we're waiting for the right moment." Glasses lifted all around me. A little uneven at first, then stronger. "To Camille," someone called out. "To the real boss," someone else muttered near the front. I smiled, but only briefly. "This gift," I said, placing my glass down, "is the last thing I'll offer quietly." And with that, I walked back to my table, leaving behind a room full of people who had no choice now but to see me exactly as I was. Not a disappointment, not a dropout, not the girl who couldn't hack it, but the woman who had built the very ground beneath their feet, and had finally decided to stop letting them pretend otherwise. They tried to recover. God, did they try. After my toast, the music crept back in, but it didn't have the same energy. The guests drank more now, not to celebrate, but to distract themselves. People who'd barely glanced my way earlier lined up to shake my hand. Suddenly, I was the most interesting person in the room, the one they had to talk to, if only to pretend they'd known all along. A hedge fund guy from New York offered to fly me out for a private tasting experience at his club. A restaurateur asked if I'd consider a signature label for his Miami chain. One woman from the legal team representing my sister's firm, who'd flat out ignored me earlier, now asked if I'd be open to a quick chat about future leasing flexibility. I smiled through all of it, but I wasn't fooled. None of them were here for me. They were here for the title, the money, the control they realized I held in the palm of my hand. Across the room, my mother sat stiffly at a bistro table, lips pressed thin, pretending to listen to a friend recount a story she wasn't hearing. Her scarf had slipped slightly, and for once she didn't fix it. She wasn't used to not being the one people looked at. Priscilla stood just behind her, arms folded, seething in silence. Her fiancé, some hedge fund executive with a jaw like a textbook photo, had drifted off, clearly unsettled by what he'd learned. I watched him check his phone, step away, and make a call with his back turned, probably figuring out how badly her lies had positioned them. My mother tried to salvage the image. She'd always been good at revisionist history. She was always brilliant, I heard her say once or twice, to whoever was nearest. Always strong-willed, even as a child. So driven. Right, driven as in a handful. Strong-willed as in difficult. Funny how the adjectives changed once power entered the room. Meanwhile, Priscilla's posture cracked with every passing minute. Her voice rose in fake laughter, her eyes scanning constantly for someone important to talk to. Anyone who hadn't yet heard that the entire venue belonged to her farm girl sister. I watched her fiancé approach again, pulling her aside. She leaned in, whispering. He didn't. His voice was sharp, frustrated. His hands moved as he spoke. Her face drained color. Their law firm, the one applying to lease the office space I owned, would not be getting approved. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have to. From across the room, I caught her eyes just long enough to watch the panic register. She knew. The tables had flipped. She'd mocked me at the gate, laughed at my career, ridiculed my clothes. But none of that changed the fact that I now held the lease to her future. And for once, I wasn't in the mood to be generous. Behind her, my brother-in-law looked at me with something between panic and realization. I could see the thoughts spinning behind his eyes. How much control does she have? How did we miss this? Can we still fix it? They couldn't. I turned my attention back to the estate staff. Matteo stood nearby, poised and composed. "Would you like us to prepare the cellar for a private tour?" he asked. "Yes," I said quietly, "but just for the investors, not the guests." He nodded, then walked off to organize the list. I glanced around one last time before rising. The lounge looked the same, but everything had changed. The dynamic, the hierarchy, the power. My mother looked older somehow, smaller. Her chair didn't fit her the way it used to. And Priscilla? She looked like someone who'd just been cut off from a supply she never knew she needed. The illusion of superiority. She used to be able to roll her eyes and make a room follow her. Now, the room followed me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I didn't humiliate them the way they did me. I just stood still and let the truth speak louder than anything I could have said. They watched. They squirmed. They whispered. But they finally saw me. And that was enough. The terrace was quiet by the time I found him. The sun had dipped low behind the hills, casting everything in amber. The vines stretched endlessly below, gold-tipped and swaying, their roots sunk deep in the soil I once couldn't afford to till. It should have felt like victory. In some ways, it did. But not here, not with him. My father stood at the stone railing, alone, a half-full glass of my 2018 Syrah in one hand, the deed envelope tucked under his arm. He didn't hear me at first. Or maybe he did and just didn't turn. I stepped closer. "I thought you'd be gone by now," he said, not facing me. "I could say the same to you." He exhaled through his nose. "This is good wine." I didn't answer. "Better than anything I've tasted in a long time," he added. "Balanced, complex, not trying too hard." "Thanks." A long pause followed. "The kind that pressed down on your shoulders." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I know." He finally turned to look at me. His face was more lined than I remembered. Not just age, regret maybe, or pride he didn't know how to express. "I thought you'd given up," he said. "Dropped out, ran off. You disappeared." "No, I didn't," I replied. "You stopped looking." That landed. His eyes fell to the glass. "I told you this was a mistake," he said after a while. "Told you farming was a waste of your education, that you were being irresponsible." I looked out over the vineyard, where the workers had already begun evening shutdown. Lights twinkled faintly near the rows of barrels. "And I listened," I said. "For a long time, I believed that. I thought maybe you were right, that I had ruined my future, but I kept going anyway." "You built something incredible," he said, almost to himself. I nodded once. "Yes, I did." He stared at the deed again. "This estate in France, is it real?" "It's yours," I said. "You said once you wanted to retire near the coast, grow olives, maybe a small plot of vines. It's all there, paid in full." He swallowed hard. "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't do it because I had to," I said. "I did it because I wanted to, before today." His eyes met mine. "That was before your daughter got turned away at the gate, before your wife called her an embarrassment, before you sat inside drinking wine from my vines while pretending I didn't exist." He flinched slightly. "Camille," I held up a hand. "I'm not here to argue or get an apology. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" I leaned against the railing beside him, arms crossed. "You told me once that family is built on respect," I said. "But you never gave me any. Not when I left school. Not when I started this place. Not even when I made the wine that's now on half the best menus in the country. He said nothing. I didn't walk away because I wanted to disappoint you, I added. I walked away because staying meant disappearing. And I wasn't willing to erase myself for your approval. His jaw tightened. I didn't know how to support something I didn't understand. Maybe, I said. But it was never about understanding. It was about listening. About choosing to believe in me even when the path wasn't clean or conventional. He nodded slowly, quietly. I see it now, he said. What you did. Who you are. I turned to face him fully. I'm not the same girl you dismissed 10 years ago. And this vineyard, this empire, doesn't change what happened. But it does mean I'm not asking for a seat at the table anymore. I know. I'm offering you one, I added. But I won't be small to make room for you. He looked at me, really looked this time. So, what happens now? I exhaled. Now? You enjoy your retirement. You drink the wine. You walk your land in France. You live. And us? I paused. You and I said gently, can start over. But this time, the terms are mine. He didn't argue. He didn't flinch. He simply nodded. And for the first time in my life, it felt like we were finally speaking the same language. I turned toward the vineyard one last time. The sky had gone soft, streaked with violet. The land below glowed, alive and breathing. Mine, all of it. Not just the soil or the buildings, the legacy. And for the first time in years, I wasn't standing outside the gate anymore.